Okay, just to reiterate, to create some more tracks, we've made 3 already. These ones are stereo tracks. I'll make a mono track now. In fact, I'll make a couple of those. So go to the file menu again, I beg your pardon, sorry, to the track menu, create new. Oops. What's happening there? And this time we'll just leave it at mono, keep it as an audio track again, and we'll make 2 of those. Create. And then you can tell the difference between the 2 by checking out the scale by the side of the track. So if it's got one sort of these central points with 2 to either side that take up the entire track, then you'll know it's mono. If it's got 2 of those, then you know it's stereo. I'm sorry about my mouse, it seems to be flicking about and I don't know why. Okay, one track which I highly recommend you use, in fact I think it's essential that you do, is to use a master track. Now the reason for this is you've got a variety of tracks here, and we'll imagine that they all have sounds on them. As you add more and more sounds, obviously you're going to get more and more noise, or not more noise, but well, maybe more noise, but more volume. And as you add more volume, you risk clipping. Clipping is again something we'll discuss in class, but it's not something you want in your track. Digital clipping is a disaster for recording musicians. So the master track, again you need to go to track and new and choose again a stereo. This should always be stereo because the likelihood is your output will always be stereo, your global output will always be stereo, and we need to make a master fader. So create that, and this track you can't put any sound on. You'll notice that it comes up with a line on it, and that's actually a volume line. Again, you can see volume here. These other tracks, as we'll see in a minute, are all in waveform mode, which means you can put waveforms in and drag them around. You can't do that on a master track. It will only allow you to change the volume on that. But it does show you a global output, which means that if your overall mix is going to the red, you will know. And it's something which, if I find clipping in your eventual track that you hand in for your assignment, I will mark you down. So in any sequencing application that you use, you really should make sure that you have a view of the master output. That applies to Logic, it applies to ProTools, it applies to Cubase, whatever you're using. In ProTools, as I say, you use the master fader for that. Okay, just have a quick look at these tracks. Again, you can they come up by default as being audio 1, audio 2, audio 3. You can change those by double clicking on the track name, and you just rename it in that dialog box. You can also switch to the next audio track and rename all of those, should you wish to. So I'm going to leave them as they are for now, because audio 1, audio 2 is fine, but obviously if you want to allocate them to particular instruments, you can do. You've got what will be familiar to you if you're using Cubase or anything, a series of controls which are fairly generic to track-based sequencing systems. You have a record button which enables the track to be recorded. We'll look at that when we come to recording something onto there. You have a solo button which solos the track. It enables that track to be heard on its own, independent of any of the other tracks, even if they've got sounds on them. And mute, I beg your pardon, is to mute that track. So it makes it silent. You cannot hear anything on that track, but you can hear everything else. The next one down, you have what's the track view selector, and if I click on that, it gives you a list of modes, if you like, for that particular track. It'd probably be better if I'll go through these again once we've actually got something on the track. But you can view your whatever sounds you've got on there as waveforms, which gives you a view of the waveform display, or as blocks. You have a volume mode, which will give you a volume automation line, which you can edit. Again, I'll show you how to do that shortly. Mute, panning for both left and right channels. Now there are two, for those of you who are Cubase or Logic users, there are ways in which this works, I think certainly better than Cubase or Nuendo or and so on, is that they are all on the same track, so you're not, every time you are adding or you want to change your volume, you're not having to create an extra sort of subsidiary track in order to change that. That's something I do like about Pro Tools. The other thing I like is the fact that you, in a stereo channel, you have independent panning control for your left and your right input channels. Again, in Cubase, for example, you only have a balance control, which enables you to bias things to left or right. But that modifies the entire stereo signal. But this one you can control the two inputs separately. So that's that control. Again, we'll look at that a little bit more in a bit. And then on the right hand side here, you've got another drop down menu, which basically gives you the option of changing the size of your track. These are the sort of quick or easy ways of changing the size. So if I change to large, it changes to a larger size. I can change it to medium and so on. If I choose all of my tracks, which I can do by pressing Shift and clicking on the track names, and click on there, and I can change them all to small size. Actually, no, I can't. Beg your pardon. Alright, hopefully I'll remember to cut that bit out. Instead, sorry, beg your pardon, you need to press Alt and choose a track size. So if you click Mini, they will all change to the same size. Actually, the Option key or the Alt key is extremely useful for doing sort of applying the same command, if you like, to a variety of different things, or all the things that are available. So again, if I choose Alt and click on Volume, they will all change to Volume View. They will all change back to Waveform View, for example. These bits down here I'm actually going to leave for the time being. These refer to the automation possibilities that you've got with Pro Tools, but again I'm going to leave that for the time being because I don't want to confuse the issue. So a couple of things we've looked at. We've looked at adding a couple more tracks. We've added a master track, which, as I say, is critical to enabling you to see the overall level of your mix. And should always be added. And we've looked at some of the track options, if you like, or controls in the edit window. Incidentally, you will notice that a lot of those controls are duplicated in the mix window, but we'll look at that properly in a minute. You'll see the track record enable is there, solo, mute, and in fact these automation modes which are along here are basically what you see in sort of slightly blacky green colour on these tracks as well.